Look, we're from IDMWORKS, both Todd and I. We started the company back in 2004. And this year we decided to stop, pause, and look at all of our implementations over the last 14 or 15 years and say, hey, what have our customers come back to us and said about what's gone wrong in their IDM program, their IGA program, their IAM program, whatever you want to call it today. And so we also had all of our consultants come back to us and provide us feedback, and our customers as well. So we went out and did surveys with our customers and said, hey, what has gone wrong with your IAM program? And so we, as you can imagine, the list was long. As you guys probably have seen in this market space, it's really difficult to implement IDM products or IAM products. And what IAM is really confusing as well. So we did that survey. We've got a list of 400 or so items. Today we're going to cover 16 of them, and we're going to role play a little bit. And I kind of popped this on Todd last minute. I had a brilliant idea last night. While you guys were doing boot camp, I had a brilliant idea as well. I thought, hey, I'm going to be the guy that has the problem, and Todd's going to tell me. I'm going to act like a customer, the customers that we see, and Todd's going to tell me what's wrong, or what can be done to fix it, or what the opportunity is. Uh-oh, this is not working so well. All right, so here are the 16 lessons. If you take a picture, I'm going to switch slide. All right, so the first one is clearly define the problem you're facing. So look, customer says, hey, I want to just buy CyberArk for privileged user management.
So I think it's mine.
Yours.
I'm just messing with it.
I can hold this microphone. Oh, that's brutal.
Okay, well, while he's messing around with the microphone, confusing you, so, right, clearly define the problem you're facing. Says, hey, I want to go buy a tool. He mentioned CyberArk, whatever it is. Good luck with that, because what you're doing, regardless of the technology that you're buying, is basically buying shelfware. And why I'm saying that is, and why I say don't buy the technology yet, is if you don't understand the problem, you don't understand, and you'll see a few more in here, the true requirements, the metrics, how you're going to test it, which are going to come up again, then if you go and you buy the technology, guess what? You got a lousy process, you got bad data. For those who attended my session yesterday, you're just going to have a fast version of crappy data and lousy process. So understand the problem, build the solution before you buy the technology.
Awesome. We know what the current state is, and the current state is really that we just have a user deprovisioning problem, and it's because you know, typically we're deprovisioning from Active Directory, and that should shut off all of our systems and access. But all we need you to do is come in and implement a tool that just deprovisions Active Directory.
Yeah, well, this is always the fun one, because this falls into the old point solution category. I got a problem, very specific pointed problem. Talk to an implementer like us. I bought a technology, come on in, and as you said, we want to fix this one thing. Well, it means you don't really understand your problem, which goes back to our last one, but you also then probably aren't, at least as an organization, ready to say you understand your current state. And in order to do that, not only do you have to document it, but you need to speak to the people in the organization. It doesn't matter if it's, well, it does matter if it's not holistic. You want to go from the top up, excuse me, the top down and the bottom up. You want to talk to the stakeholders. You need to understand things from the enterprise architecture side, et cetera. And then at the bottom of it, you need to understand the end users, because what will happen is the guys at the top are going to say things to you like, well, we just want to fix this AD provisioning problem. And then you're going to talk to the folks at the bottom who say, listen, that's great, but they gave me 3 AD accounts. I got 3 different AD accounts, and by the way, they manage 14 different systems that I use for authentication, and they all have different password rules, and I can't use the same password 10 times. So what I do is I just change this one, and then I change them all, and then I do it 10 times in a row, so I can go back to the old one. It means that we don't understand the true current state. So we have to talk to people. We have to get that data. We have to collect that information. And if we're not doing that, yeah, we got this tiny little piece of it. And we've seen this time and time again. If you don't understand the current state, and it's not just the tech, what are the issues? You're doomed to failure every time.
So we've documented our processes. We have an admin guide and a run book for our environment. But when it comes to provisioning, deprovisioning, and SSO, we've documented the workflow, and it's really simple. And so what happens is Mary picks up the new hire report from PeopleSoft, and she provisioned all of the users that morning. And then the next day, Bob takes the file from Mary and makes sure that Mary did her job correctly. And that's really how we do it. And our documentation is perfect.
I love this one. This is twofold. By the way, for the folks who are taking the pictures, by the way, we'll give you a copy, I promise. At the end of this, either Paul at IDMWORKS.com or Todd at IDMWORKS.com, shoot us a message, we'll send it to you. And why? It comes back to this. Because documentation is key. We'll share. We're good that way. You like that?
And you share in real time.
Right after, so we'll call that near real time. That's the part about documentation, twofold. We run into the problems, not just that there's a lack of documentation, but that it's like anything else you do. I did it once, and I never go back to it. And then it falls into the old people process technology, you know, the thing when you say, hey, what do you mean by that? And they all go, you know, people process technology, and they can't explain it. The people aspect of this is, his example was tribal knowledge. Mary does this thing. A, then B, then C. She goes down to E, maybe down to N, goes back up. There's a couple asterisks because they're brand new things that only she knows. And then, by the way, she just found another job. So all of those asterisk processes go away. So guess what? Our documentation doesn't work because it's a people problem. And then our process is broken because the documented process isn't getting updated. And if it's not getting updated, well, what's the point? I used an example yesterday in a session. You bought a car, cool new car, and you love the car, and it's all ready to go. Do you get an oil change? Hopefully at some point, depending on the car, 1 year, 6 months, billion miles, 1 mile. If you're not, what happens to the car? Well, as I learned as a freshman in college, your engine, you hear this sound, and then your engine's dead. It was a junky car, thank God. The point being, upkeep. And this falls into governance as well. Upkeep, upkeep, upkeep. If we don't water and feed this thing, you have a lack of documentation because your documentation's never updated. And then the last part of the puzzle, as he was bringing up, is we've got an admin guide and a run book. Great. Did we have a test plan? Do we have a communication plan? Do we have a governance plan? If we're putting something in that's over an old legacy system we're pulling out, do we have a rollback and cutover plan? Do we really understand what our documentation is? And then, are we managing that documentation once we've created it?
Hold on. So we don't actually have a people or process issue. We actually just have a technology issue. And our technology issue is that our users can't SSO, and they have to remember too many passwords. Our people are doing a great job, and our process is fantastic. It's just the technology, Todd.
So for this one, I get to ask him a question back. What do you mean by people process technology? And then the blank stare. I don't need to go over this one again, obviously. Again, buy technology first. Good luck.
Uh-oh, clicker's not working.
Yep,
there we go. Develop good. We have great requirements. Our requirement is to provision accounts faster, 1. 2, we got an audit finding from our audit team, and they want us to deprovision faster. And so those are our requirements for our program, and it's a 2018 program, and in 2019 we have other business priorities.
Yeah, those aren't requirements, those are wishes. We want to go faster. If you have a good BA on your team, keep them. You know, BAs are a little bit, unfortunately, become a little dime a dozen out there in the last, 15 years or so, maybe even longer. If you get a good BA, you hold on to them tight. How do you know a good BA? People that can actually write requirements. We want our provisioning to go quicker. That's not a requirement. How do you trace that? How do you use it as a metric in the future to show that you've actually gotten anything done? An example I used yesterday, I'm going to use again today, was, hey, onboarding of a new user needs to go from 4 weeks to 4 hours or 4 minutes. Why is that important? And this is a business requirement, because now I can utilize that to define my system requirements, and I can use that to test. Now you can go, it's all right, it's all good, don't worry about it. Sorry, I like to do that to people. It's really mean. If any of you leave, you're getting called out. Write good requirements.
So our measure of success for this program is that we can, when our Big Four auditor comes in, that the number of issues that they find is less than 10%. Also, I want to make sure that we have only 45 roles for the entire enterprise. That's our measure of success.
So, you know, interestingly enough, you'll see we have a couple things in here, but it's going to come down to the metrics. How do we test this? And the reason I went quick on the requirements was I knew it was going to feed into this one, right? Our requirements are key because we need to utilize them to then define the what's in it for me, so to speak. How can I prove at the end of the day that my implementation was a success? What are the metrics? How do we follow this? What are we benchmarking? Can I now prove to you that it took 4 minutes or 4 hours, if need be, to onboard a new person? And what's interesting is, if you have a true ROI request from your management who says, hey, the return on investment needs to be shown, well, now I can say, look, 4 hours versus 4 weeks, what is the cost of the person doing that today, et cetera. We can actually throw out metrics that tie to numbers and show not only that we did what we said we were going to do, here's the actual cost savings. Now, it's always a tough nut to crack when it comes to IAM because this is really about risk. And I used this one yesterday as well. ROI has 2 meanings. The other one is risk of incarceration, right? It's the perp walk, the C-level guys who have attested that no, all of our data is locked down and secure, or the criminal, as I said, or civil penalties that come out of it. And what happens when one of those happens? Who goes first? It's like a game. Usually the CISO, right, who's the security guard with the little thing in the ear protecting the president, the CEO, and the C-level. And he hopefully, based off of this process that we're going over, has his armor, his bulletproof vest, because otherwise he's the guy who's going to get capped trying to protect you. Paul, do you remember what CISO stands for?
No.
No? It's a career is soon over.
Oh, nice.
Yes, average CISO lifespan's what? 2 years.
2 years.
So that's why we have to be able to actually show the success. We have to be able to show it. We have to be able to prove it because, among other things, we've got these auditors out there who want you to be able to prove it.
So we don't have any political issues in our organization. The Identity and Access Management program is just an IT-based program, and it's not going to affect our business. And our business doesn't really have to be involved.
Oh, you gotta love politics. I don't even know how long I gotta spend on this one, but apparently nobody's got them in here, right? What's the political part? You know, this group here, oh, actually, I'm going to give you a specific example because I think I could go on forever on this one. I think we all could. The reason I want to bring this one up is organization we were at recently picked up an auto provisioning tool, but they also have a service desk tool. And the fight was on. Who's first? This is a big political thing. And it stopped the project completely. It went from there was a plan, getting ready to execute, to the whole project got frozen because service desk said, no. HR and the non-employee stuff, they come to us first. And then we go to the provisioning tool, and then that can go do its things. Careful. And then the folks for the auto-prov tool said, no. HR and employees, they come to us first. And then you're downstream. Mm-hmm. And because they didn't have that answer up front, there was a big fight, big political fight, and the thing's been frozen for about 6 months now and counting. And it's changed. One day it was, no, we're going to do provisioning. The next day it was, no, service is going to be. We have another customer that the same thing happened. It was a political fight. The provisioning tool won. They put it in place, and within 6 months, the folks that were there, they went off, found other jobs, actually, who were on the ops side of that. And then the service desk folks then said, well, we want to change it now. And they're actually ripping the thing out. They could put something that's different in and start it with service desk. Like, you should just burn the money. Integrators like us, we love it, it's like. But that's not a good thing. We're not happy that that's what's happened. You're up.
So we don't have any confidential data on SharePoint or file shares or Unix servers or Windows file shares, network shares, anything like that. All of our data is on box.com, and so we encrypt everything on box.com.
Yeah, this is one of the few things now that we're starting to finally see some good movement on. Data access governance tools have been out forever and a day, I'd swear, at this point. But nobody seemed for a long time to be jumping on it because of the, don't worry, we know what we're doing on it, there's no issues, or we got it covered, or we'll clean it up on our own. Nobody has taken that impetus in a lot of times, and what happens, as we said, bad data, right? It's the old garbage in, garbage out. Bad data, bad process, you just get a fast version of it. So what we're starting to see more and more of is organizations finally say, you know what? We can't just be worried about the entitlements as it relates to you, to the end users, to our user base, to our systems. It's got to actually apply to the data as well. Because these days, something gets breached and you have orphaned accounts, orphaned data that's out there. What happens? You don't know what was taken. Or you move from an on-prem to a cloud environment, and you've kept all that legacy stuff from the people who've left the organization, so they don't move to the cloud. So it sits out there on your old on-prem stuff, and it's an orphan. It's just sitting out there. We didn't even bother, never thought about it. Organization gets breached. Or, even worse, that server goes away, all that data's gone. So data is everywhere.
So it doesn't matter what the data looks like in our HR system and Active Directory. It doesn't have to be unified or standardized because our identity management product and program and our identity manager will fix that data.
Oh yeah, that one's a good one. Anyone ever get the call from a recruiter out there say, hey, we want you to be our identity manager? Oh, it always used to make me laugh. I've seen less of it now. And I'd be like, you want me to be a product? Anyways, how many times am I going to say fast, bad process, fast data so we can move on?
Oh, you're done? Okay.
Listen, I think everyone in here is going to understand the garbage in, garbage out.
So IAM governance increases oversight. So we don't need a governance committee because our CIO mandated that we do an identity management program, and our roles will be our governance, our leading light, and people will just get access via roles. And so that's simple enough, right? We have a role glossary, so we don't need a governance committee.
Yeah, don't change the oil on your car. See how well that goes. Yeah, you don't need more windshield wiper fluid. I know you're out. So same problem here. So governance, everybody loves to talk governance. How many sessions have you guys seen now at some point where governance is the key word? Remember I said people, process, technology, challenge them, say what does that mean? Same thing with governance. When they say I am governance, say what do you mean by that? See how many folks actually have a real answer. Governance is like this big keyword. It's like, remember, gosh, at this point, 5, 6 years ago, when you'd get from the C-level folks, we need cloud. And you go, what is that? Cloud. Big billowy thing up there. Nobody could answer what that meant, right? Hey, man, it's other people's servers. So it's the nice way to put it. Now, we can go even in deeper detail, but they couldn't even go that basic. And that's the problem. The same thing applies with governance. And the example. The roles. So we've had organizations where we've come in, for example, built out a role model, and you may have done the same. And we're like, this is great. We always heard this great 80-20 rule, and it turned out to be 20-80, but fine. We got 20% of them out there, and now everybody that comes in gets this role, I'm in IT, I'm IT admin 3. That's what they put me in. So I get access to this, I get access to this, I get access to this. Wonderful. What happened 6 months later? Oh, we had a dozen more come in, and guess what? They got that role, but they needed 4 more things. One-offs. So we didn't do any governance. Therefore, everyone now that comes in the organization is getting a one-off or multiple one-offs. So what happened to our role model? What was the point to it? I bought the car and came with the oil. I don't need anything new, no new oil. We didn't keep up with it. The role model gets stale. Or new requests come in to add functionalities to the systems. And do we just run and do it? Do we sit and wait on it? Here's the problem. We may not need that functionality, or it may break something else. Did we put it in front of, say, a governance review board? Just like an architectural review board. The problem with the architectural review boards is they're only thinking architecture, which is what it's built for. But a governance review board basically needs to say, are we correcting something? Is it stale within the system? Is it new technology? How does it affect other things downstream? Just like an architectural review board from that perspective, but in order to make sure that we're keeping up with the system so these things aren't stale. It's not just about patching, right? We do that from that technology side. Now we're saying, let's keep our role model up to date. Because in 6 months, the whole thing we could throw out otherwise, because everything's a one-off.
I think you might have hit the second to last one. Oh, no, we're at 11.
That's
oh
okay.
God,
we're almost out of time, so that works.
Okay, so our developers picked up an open source toolkit to do security, and so all of our code is secure. We don't do code reviews. Sometimes we do code reviews, but we check it into GitHub and Bitbucket and all of that stuff, so we're good on that.
Oh, yeah. We love this one, right? We don't have any formal processes, procedures. Again, I'm trying not to read everything directly off these so you guys can have a copy. And the point being that if we don't have these processes, procedures built and ready to go and that we follow and adhere to, what ends up happening is, as he says, hey, don't worry, I got my own open source tool that I brought in that my group uses, and we got 12 different ways to do the same thing. There's no congruity within this process, and so things fall by the wayside. You need to have some enforcement and some real strict policies and procedures when it comes to everything from coding, coding review, documentation, etc. If you don't, you fall into this big pit. Right? The other thing is, we already sort of brought up what happens when we have multiple tools that we're buying or multiple tools that do the same thing, i.e. they become point solutions. It's no different in this process. If I got 4 different methods, 4 different options, and different groups are doing their own thing, we got us a problem because you're going to have tribal knowledge, lack of documentation, different process procedures, all the stuff we've been talking about up till now. The only thing I take a little bit of umbrage is the word best practice, because my best practices may not be your best practices or your best practices. It's a little bit of what's eye in the beholder, but you do have to have some strict or enforced process at least, or practice within your organization.
I'm getting the buzzer telling us that we got to hurry up.
Right, see it right there.
Get the right people in the room. Again, this is back to the old example of we just need IT in the room because identity management is an IT problem. I don't need to involve the business.
Isn't that great? Or vice versa. We only did the business, we didn't involve anybody else. Yeah, we have to make sure that we have, it kind of goes back again, you'll remember the word governance, proper governance. What does that mean? At the top end, you have things like steering committees, you phase gate reviews, you have all these things that go up to the upper management, but that doesn't mean that they're going to always be the same stakeholders across the board for everything. You want to make sure you got your enterprise architecture is identified. They're in the mix. The operations folks that are going to have to take this thing over, all the proper stakeholders are in the right room, and it's not just for kickoff. It's for communications and ongoing communication of the process and the procedures. And if we don't, yeah, I'm sure you guys run into this, where you've put something in that actually worked perfectly. You're like, wow, this thing went off without a hitch. That doesn't happen too often. But it didn't make its way up. So what ends up happening is we didn't really get too many kudos. And not that that's important, except that guess what? Now I want to do the next thing, I didn't get the budget for it. The next part of it, I didn't get the budget for it. Because the right people don't understand it. They haven't heard about it. They're not involved. We have to keep those people in the mix. And it's at the top, it's at the bottom. Everyone needs to understand what's going on. The other cool thing about it is, if it's something that's going to expand, well, you are able to show success across the board, they're going to be the ones pushing. Auto provisioning, we used as an example before. You onboard 10 apps in your first phase. And everything goes well, and those folks are great, and they hit their metrics, and it's going all the way up to management. What's going to happen? You can get calls about the next phase. I want to be the next one in the onboarded, to be onboarded in your process.
So we put together a communications plan, and our communications plan is we're going to put it on the company SharePoint site, the intranet. And when we roll this out, it's going to be seamless. So we don't really need to communicate to our business that there's a new way to log in or a new way to request access.
Right. So limited communication is what I call that.
Right.
Open communication, not quite the same thing. The last piece of this one, because we're going to jump quick to the next one, is simply, it's not just open communication, but watch your verbiage and your syntax. If people don't understand what you're saying, you're running the same issue. I don't know how many folks here have gotten into that know-it-all in the room that says everything with such a high, level of how he says it, but it's really pie in the sky, and we don't really understand what he said at the end of the day. I've seen a couple of prezos like that, unfortunately, where I'm like, I'm not certain what I just saw. So we need to be careful of the jargon. We need to understand that there's a definition aspect of this. If we're not all on the same page, it doesn't work.
Okay, 14. Communicate changes in technology and processes. So I put together a stakeholder impact assessment, and we're going to communicate to the operations folks, the day we go live, we're going to give them the run book, and they're going to take over, and the change in technology and process will be marginal and minimal to them because they'll have a standardized GUI.
Ooh, you know what my favorite part is? I'm going to spend too much more on this one, but when you're in ops and you get that phone call, hey, we just put in this point solution we bought, and they're not going to say it that way. We just put in this new tool that we bought. I know you guys are all Microsoft-centric, but this one runs on Linux. It's live. We're happy. Here you go, ops. Take care of it for us. And then you go, ah! And then, yeah, either you leave or you freak out, and I've seen a few smiles. I don't think it's because I did this. I think it's because you've seen that.
So our policies are going to cover the entire organization, and we're not going to have any exceptions.
Yeah, next.
Our IAM program is funded for 2018, and it's a one-time project to remediate the audit issues.
Oh, yeah, these are fun. You got that budget for the year, and you ran your phase 1, maybe even your phase 2, but this was going to be 6 phases over the course of the next 3 years because you got this wonderful roadmap that you're following and trying to adhere to. But you get through the first year, and then what happens? You didn't communicate it properly and often enough. It's got to be often enough. So then year 2 came around, and guess what? Well, they didn't budget for it because they thought it was a one and done, plug and play and move on. And again, care and feeding, water it. If we don't do this, we don't expand on it, there's no one and done. Every 36 months, especially, all the technology in this field changes, right? Blockchain. Who here was thinking blockchain 3 years ago? You may not even be thinking it now, right? Everything has changed, and it continues to change. Two rounds of that ago, cloud. People were talking about cloud. They weren't actually doing anything. Now, 5 years, 6 years later, it's the mainstay. So the point being that this is going to be continuous. You have to constantly keep up with it. And if you think it's a one and done, or your management thinks it's a one and done, that's all your fault because you're not communicating that it is not that simple. On that note, are we have questions? Okay, real quick. So either Todd at IDMWORKS.com or Paul at IDMWORKS.com, and we will send you a copy of this. Do we have any quick questions or anything? Okay. Well, it's lessons learned, so hopefully that was good. You can catch us after. Actually, catch him because I'm on next. Thank you.